Have you ever stopped to think about how different parts of a society can be so deeply linked, but also, incredibly distinct? Especially somewhere like India, which is just so vast and vibrant. It's almost like looking at this amazing tapestry, right? But every single thread has its own story.
That's a great way to put it. And that's really our mission today. We're going deep, trying to unpack those core differences, but also the surprising links between India's main societal segments, tribal, rural, and urban.
Yeah, and we've gathered quite a bit of material for this deep dive. Sources that let us see these communities, not just by where they are on a map, but, through their specific ways of life, their cultures, their challenges.
Exactly. And here's the really key thing we want to bring out. These segments, they definitely have their own distinct features. You've got tribal communities with unique cultures, often living more isolated lives. Then rural and urban areas, they differ hugely in just the physical environment, the whole rhythm of daily life. But, and this is crucial, there's this constant dynamic interaction happening between all of them. It's not static.
Okay, so our goal is to sort of shine a light on what's most important in understanding that whole dynamic picture.
Precisely.
All right, let's start then. Let's begin with the tribal community. And I guess right away we need to talk about the word tribe itself, because it sounds like it's maybe more complicated than you'd first think, especially in India.
Oh, definitely. Our sources really highlight that. Western definitions of tribe often just don't quite fit here, or in parts of Africa for that matter, because these groups, they've been interacting with rural, even urban communities for a very long time.
Ah, okay. So finding a group that's been completely isolated, sort of pristine, that's actually not that common.
It's quite rare, yeah. The reality is much more about historical interaction and transformation.
Right. So it's less about a fixed definition and more about understanding their journey through history, which brings us to another term, Adivasi. Is that used more often now?
It is, particularly by scholars. Adivasi is essentially an umbrella term for India's Aboriginal populations. People like Bhumik Deshmukh and David Hardiman prefer it because, well, it points to this shared experience, this common fate these groups faced, especially under colonial rule.
Okay.
And it also reflects their political presence today. They're often asserting their rights, alongside other marginalized communities like Dalits.
So if tribe is tricky sociologically, how does the Indian Constitution handle it? Does it define it?
Well, the Constitution uses a specific term, scheduled tribes. You find it in Article 366 and Article 342. Essentially, the President of India can designate certain groups as scheduled tribes.
Based on what, exactly?
Based on certain characteristics, things like having primitive traits, being geographically isolated, having a distinct culture, maybe a history of being hesitant to mix with the wider community, and also economic backwardness.
So it's a legal and administrative category.
Exactly. And it's important to see tribe as a social concept and scheduled tribe as this constitutional one. They're not contradictory. They're sort of complementary ways of identifying these communities.
Yeah, it's really clear. Okay, so geographically, where are these tribal communities mainly found in India? Is there a pattern?
There is. L.P. Vidyarthi did a classification back in the 70s, grouping them into 5 main regions. You've got the northeastern Himalayan region, think Garo, Khasi, Naga tribes.
Right, the northeast.
Then there's the middle Indian region, which is huge. Over half, maybe 55% of India's tribal population lives here. We're talking states like Jharkhand, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. Major groups like the Gond, Santhal, Munda live there.
Wow, over half. That's significant.
It really is. Then moving west, you have the Western Indian region, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, with about 10 million tribal people, including groups like the Bhil.
Right.
And down south, maybe about 1/6 of the tribal population. Tribes like the Toda, Koda, Chenshu, in places like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala.
And the islands.
Yes, can't forget the island region. Andaman and Nicobar, Lakshadweep. Home to some incredibly distinct groups like the Jarawa, the Onge, even the Sentinelese, who remain largely uncontacted. It's just an immense spread, incredible diversity.
It really paints a picture. So across this diversity, what are some of the core defining characteristics? What makes a tribal community distinct?
Well, geographical isolation has historically been a big one, living in more remote forest and hilly areas, these sort of padas, although, that's changing now with migration and development pushing in.
And their economy.
It's diverse, but often based on subsistence. Hunting, fishing, gathering food, simple agriculture, sometimes shifting cultivation, known by different names like Jum or Podu. Technology is often quite rudimentary.
So survival-level economics, often.
Often, yes. Which leads to challenges like poor health, lower literacy rates, lack of infrastructure. Some even still rely on barter systems.
Despite those challenges, there must be a strong sense of community.
Absolutely. A very strong sense of identity is key. They know who they are. They have clear territorial awareness, common names Warli, Gond, Naga, that really bind them together.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, they're endogamous groups. Marriage happens within the tribe. It's often viewed more like a contract, so divorce or remarriage doesn't usually carry the same stigma as in some other communities, though intertribal marriage is becoming more common.
And culturally, language.
Distinct cultures, definitely. Independent traditions, folklore, beliefs, their own connection to the ecology. They often have their own dialects, though they might use a regional language to communicate with outsiders.
It sounds like a simpler social structure in some ways.
Generally, yes, social relationships are really built around family and kinship. You don't tend to see the kind of rigid social stratification like the caste system that dominates other parts of Indian society. There's more of an egalitarian feel, usually.
What about their spiritual beliefs? The sources mention things like animism.
Yes, animism, the idea of worshiping souls or ancestors, as Edward Tyler described it. There's also animism, belief in forces within non-living things like stones or wood, and totemism is significant too.
Totemism.
Mm.
That's where a specific animal or plant is seen as an ancestor.
Exactly, like a clan symbol or protector. James Fraser wrote about that. And Max Mueller talked about naturism, worshiping elements of nature. It's all deeply tied to their environment.
Like the sacred groves. That sounded fascinating.
Sacred groves are wonderful examples. These are patches of forest dedicated to local deities. They're spiritual centers, but they also help conserve biodiversity, linking people directly with nature. Sadly, they often lack formal legal protection.
Are there specific examples?
Oh, yes. In Maharashtra, you might find a Suryadev Mandir for sun worship, or Shedoba Chavan, or the Hagoba Mandir, that's the tiger god temple. The tiger is seen as a protector of the forest, revered by groups like the Warlis.
A tiger god temple. Wow, that connection to nature is so direct. And the Warli rain dance, the Kambad dance.
Ah, yes. The Kambad dance is beautiful. It's performed by Warli men right at the start of the monsoon. It's dedicated to Kansari Devi, who is the goddess of food grains.
Why then?
Well, there's a legend behind it. About the importance of not wasting grain. So the dance is both a ritual asking for good rains and a reminder of respecting their food source. It really captures their culture and their reliance on agriculture.
It sounds like such a rich, deeply connected way of life. But unfortunately, these communities have also faced enormous problems, haven't they? A lot of exploitation.
Immense problems, yes. And many have deep historical roots. You can trace some of it back to the British era. Their interest in minerals and natural resources often meant encroaching on tribal lands.
Right.
Then contact with missionaries sometimes created identity challenges. And as transport improved, it opened up these areas to outsiders, traders, moneylenders, which disrupted traditional systems, even things like traditional medicine.
And that often led to people being pushed off their land. Displacement? Yes, massive displacement. Big industrial projects, large dams, new highways. They've often been built right through tribal territories, forcing people out of their ancestral homes.
That must be devastating, losing the land that provides their livelihood.
It's fundamental. This alienation from forest land is a core issue. They've faced exploitation from moneylenders, zamindars, landlords, traders. Even state land acquisition has taken its toll. There was a government report, I think, 2007, 2008, showing hundreds of thousands of cases of tribal land being alienated.
How much land are we talking about?
The report mentioned over 9 lakh acres involved in about 5 lakh cases. Now, some of that was eventually restored to the tribals, about 5 lakh acres and over 2 lakh cases decided in their favor. But still, a huge amount wasn't. The problem persists.
And this loss of land, this economic disruption, it leads straight to poverty, doesn't it? And debt. Absolutely. A majority live below the poverty line. Their traditional occupations, the simple agriculture or gathering, often don't generate much surplus or profit. So income is low, and they become vulnerable to moneylenders charging exorbitant interest. It's a vicious cycle.
And the health impacts you mentioned earlier.
Grave concerns, yes. Chronic infections, often waterborne because of lack of clean water. Malnutrition is widespread. Infant mortality rates are tragically high. Access to proper medical care and sanitation facilities is often very limited.
Education, too, you said, is a challenge.
A huge barrier. Illiteracy rates are high. Often, school timings clash with when children are needed for work. Remember, children are often economic assets in these families.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, schools might not be nearby, or the curriculum might be in a language they don't speak at home. All this leads to high dropout rates.
He paints a picture of really systemic challenges. Bonded labor was also mentioned. I thought that was banned.
It is banned by law, but sadly, it still exists in pockets. It's directly linked to poverty, the lack of stable income, the land alienation, the debt. People get trapped.
And even shifting cultivation, which seems traditional, is seen as a problem now.
Yes, because on a large scale, it contributes to deforestation and soil erosion, which has wider environmental impacts. So it's another complex issue.
Given this complex web of problems, what's been done to try and address them? What about tribal development efforts?
Well, after independence, there was a significant push. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru's Panchsheel philosophy for tribal development was quite influential.
Panchsheel. What was the core idea?
The main principle was that tribal people should develop according to their own unique culture and genius. Development shouldn't be imposed from the outside. Their rights to land and forests should be respected.
So, not assimilation, but support for their own way of life.
Exactly. Nehru stressed training tribal people themselves for administration and development work in their areas, avoiding over-administration, working with their existing institutions, and critically, judging success by the quality of human life, not just by money spent or statistics.
That sounds like a very respectful approach. What kind of programs came out of that?
Various government efforts followed, using different funding mechanisms. Things like building hostels for students, setting up educational complexes, especially for women in areas with low literacy, grants to tribal development corporations, village grain banks, supporting voluntary organizations doing work in tribal areas.
And research.
Yes, research and training specifically focused on tribal development. Plus, scholarships for higher education, overseas studies, book banks, coaching for competitive exams, establishing tribal advisory councils.
So quite a range of initiatives. Have they been successful?
It's mixed. Let's be honest. Despite all these efforts, not all programs have delivered the desired results. Many of the problems we discussed still persist. Implementation is often the challenge.
But the Constitution itself provides a strong basis for action, right?
Oh, absolutely. There are over 20 articles in the Constitution that provide for the upliftment, positive discrimination, and affirmative action for scheduled tribes.
Could you give an example?
Sure. Article 14 guarantees equal rights. Article 15 prohibits discrimination, but Clause 4 specifically allows the state to make special provisions for backward classes, including STs. Article 16.4 allows for reservation in government jobs.
And specific directives.
Yes, Article 46 is key. It directs the state to promote the educational and economic interests of scheduled tribes and protect them from social injustice and all forms of exploitation. There are provisions for administration of scheduled areas, grants for ST welfare, and reserved seats in parliament and state legislatures.
Reserved seats are crucial for political representation.
Very crucial. Articles 330 and 332 ensure that. And Article 335 addresses their claims in appointments to government services. So the constitutional framework is robust. The intent is clearly there to support and uplift these communities, even if the practical outcomes haven't always matched the ambition.
Okay, so we've explored the tribal communities, their unique situation, their challenges. Now let's shift focus. Let's move to the heartland, you could say, the rural communities, the villages that make up so much of India. What defines rural life here?
Fundamentally, rural life in India is agrarian. It's tied to the land. The economy is dominated by agriculture, raising animals, fishing, activities like that. It's all deeply connected to natural resources and the rhythm of the seasons.
And much lower population density than cities, obviously.
Right. And the way of life tends to revolve around a more traditional value system. You have to remember the scale we're talking about.
The numbers are staggering, aren't they?
Nearly 69% of the population in the 2011 census lived in rural areas. That's something like 6.4 lakh villages. India really is, in many ways, a land of villages.
Historically, did villages operate differently?
They had more autonomy, traditionally. That started changing significantly during the British period, which exposed them more to outside influences, new ways of life. Sociologists have spent a lot of time studying villages, looking at community bonds, settlement patterns, class structures. the impact of land reforms.
So how would you define a rural community simply?
Think of it as a cluster of people living relatively close together within a specific area, sharing a common way of life that's primarily based on agriculture and related activities. The census definition usually puts a population cap around 5,000 for a typical village.
And how are they governed today? Is there a formal structure?
Yes, that's where Panchayati Raj comes in. It's the system of local self-government. It came out of recommendations from the Balwan Trimeta Committee back in the 50s.
Right, the 3 tiers.
Exactly. You have the Zilla Parishad at the district level, the Panchayat Samiti at the block level, and the Gram Panchayat at the village level. It's a move from the old informal justice system, the 5 village elders, to a formal administrative body focused on rural development.
A big change. So what are the key characteristics that really define these rural communities today?
Well, first is that strong sense of community living. Villages tend to meet most of the basic needs of their residents, which fosters a feeling of togetherness. Development is often driven by local needs.
In size, obviously.
Small size, lower density compared to cities, and then the absolute dominance of agriculture. It's more than just a job. It's deeply ingrained in the culture, the way of life. It still contributes a huge chunk to the national income, and over 60% of people depend on it.
And this often supports other crafts, too.
Yes, things like pottery, carpentry, weaving, they're often linked to the agricultural economy.
What about relationships between people? How do they differ from urban life?
They're mostly what sociologists call primary relations. They're informal, personal, face-to-face. You know people, they're families. This creates a strong we feeling, a social cohesion. Though, it has to be said, sometimes political interference can strain those bonds these days.
Is there more uniformity in rural areas?
Generally, yes. More social homogeneity. You see similarities in thinking, behavior, dress, lifestyle. There's a stronger tendency to stick to traditions. And definitely strong group-feeling people tend to help each other out, especially in emergencies.
And the family. It plays a huge role.
Central, absolutely central. The joint family, the extended family living together was traditionally the norm. Even though that's changing and becoming less common physically, that collective mindset often persists. Sorokin and Zimmerman called it familism. The family unit is paramount.
Does that affect the status of women?
Often, yes. Rural societies tend to be more patriarchal. There's often strong control over women's lives. The ideal of pativrata, meaning intense loyalty and service to the husband, can be very strong, pushing women towards traditional, often subservient roles.
And religion. Is it more prominent?
Definitely a deep faith in religious practices, in God, in traditions. Almost every village will have its own Gram Devata, village deity, that everyone, regardless of caste, usually worships. There are annual fairs, festivals, worship of family deities too. It's woven into daily life.
You mentioned caste. How does that play out in villages?
The caste system has been historically inseparable from rural life. It's traditionally based on ideas of purity and pollution, dictating customs, occupations. You had systems like the Baludadari system in some areas, where different castes perform specific services for each other.
Like a form of interdependence?
Yes, a very structured interdependence based on caste hierarchy. Now that's undergoing significant change, especially after independence, but the influence of caste is still very much present in social interactions and mindsets.
Okay, so strong community, tradition, agriculture.
Yeah.
But alongside that, what are the ongoing problems, the persistent challenges in rural India?
Poverty is still a huge issue. Many rural people, small farmers, landless laborers, artisans struggle to meet even basic needs. It's a major socioeconomic problem.
And illiteracy.
Still rampant compared to urban areas. Even with government programs like Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan aiming for universal education, challenges remain. Budgetary issues, poor quality of education in some places, children needing to work. It all contributes.
Is there resistance to change sometimes?
Yes. Traditionalism and conservatism can be strong. People might be reluctant to adopt new methods or ideas, sometimes due to habit, sometimes fear of the unknown, sometimes just a fatalistic attitude believing things can't change. Superstitions can also play a role.
And the caste system, even if changing, still causes problems.
Its influence is still deeply embedded. While the traditional authorities and rights might be less obvious now, caste identity still shapes social interactions, relationships, even participation in festivals sometimes.
And a really worrying issue we hear about is farmer suicides.
Tragically, yes. It's a grave concern. It's often linked to crushing financial debt, sometimes worsened by the negative impacts of economic reforms on the agricultural sector, price fluctuations, crop failures.
And the status of women we touched on.
It remains a challenge. Women often have a subordinate status, controlled by family, religion, customs. Patriarchal values are still strong, leading to discriminatory practices.
Also disputes within families.
Very common, especially over land ownership. This can lead to the breakdown of joint families, and land gets divided into smaller and smaller, often uneconomical plots. This can really discourage younger generations from wanting to stay in farming.
It's a complex picture of strengths and challenges. What's being done in terms of rural development? What are the trends?
Well, the sociologist A.R. Desai pointed out some key trends of change. A rapid shift from just growing food for survival, subsistence, to growing crops for the market. The introduction of modern farming technology. Also, the abolition of intermediary systems like the old zamindari system, where landlords controlled vast tracts, and the rise of new associations and institutions that connect villages to larger urban and national networks.
And specific government programs.
Post-independence, there have been many. The Community Development Program started way back in 1952, aiming for overall village development and getting the community involved. Then Panchayati Raj in 1957 gave villages more administrative power. Later, the Integrated Rural Development Program, IRDP, came in.
What about more recent schemes? There seem to be quite a few.
Oh, yes. There's the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, focused on building rural roads crucial for connectivity. Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Gramin Kaushalya Yojana for skill development. The National Rural Livelihood Mission.
And the Employment Guarantee Scheme.
MGNRGS, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, provides a safety net of guaranteed wage employment. There's Sampurna Gramin Rozgar Yojana, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyam for education, Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana, where MPs adopt villages.
Housing schemes, too?
Yes. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana for rural housing, formerly Indira Awas Yojana, and food security schemes like Antyodaya Anna Yojana. It's a wide range of efforts trying to tackle those persistent problems.
And importantly, this isn't happening in a vacuum, right? There's this constant back and forth with urban areas.
Exactly. That's the rural-urban continuum we mentioned. They're completely interdependent. Cities need food, raw materials from the countryside. Rural areas need technology, markets, specialized services from the cities.
And this interaction changes rural life itself.
Definitely. It leads to more diversity, more heterogeneity in villages. Traditional caste structures tend to weaken. Barter systems give way to cash economies. It's a constant dynamic.
That flows perfectly into our final segment, the urban community. Cities as these major hubs of change. So what actually defines an urban community?
We're talking about towns, cities, metropolitan areas. They're really shaped by industrial development and the whole process of urbanization. Key defining factors are things like population density, the types of jobs people do, the social organization, even a distinct culture and environment.
So it's more than just lots of people.
Much more. Sociologists like Louis Wirth described a city as a relatively large, dense, permanent settlement of people who are socially very different from each other, heterogeneous. Early sociologists in Europe and the U.S., like Tanis, Durkheim, Simmel, Robert Park, they all studied the rise of cities and what they called urbanism as a distinct way of life.
How is an urban area formally defined?
Generally, it's a human settlement with high population density and a lot of built infrastructure, buildings, roads, etc. It's created through urbanization. Max Weber had specific attributes he looked for.
Like what?
Fortifications, a market, its own legal system, a sense of citizenship or association, and political autonomy. Henri Pirenne focused on a middle class dependent on trade and a communal organization. Merriam-Webster talks about it being typical of modern industrial civilization, diverse, secular, and more individualistic.
Okay, so building on that, what are the standout characteristics of urban communities? You mentioned heterogeneity first.
Yes, that's a big one. Cities are incredibly diverse. You have people from different classes, occupations, castes, speaking different languages, following different religions, all living close together. Migration for jobs, education, healthcare drives this.
Which creates a cosmopolitan feel.
It does. But that mix can also lead to friction or tension sometimes. And then there's the sheer density of population.
Right, lots of people in a small space.
Exactly. Cities often grow rapidly, drawing people in, sometimes called urban octopuses. This leads to overcrowding. Mumbai, for instance, has far less open space per person than recommended standards. It puts immense pressure on everything.
And jobs are very different from rural areas.
Completely different, highly specialized occupations, a very complex division of labor, and mostly non-agricultural work, manufacturing, trade, commerce, professional services, government jobs.
Does this allow for more social movement, climbing the ladder?
Generally, yes. The class structure in cities tends to allow for more social mobility. What you achieve, your education, your job, often matters more than the family or caste you were born into. So, achieved status becomes more important than ascribed status, helping break down older barriers.
And relationships. You said rural was primary. What about urban?
Mostly secondary relationships. Interactions tend to be more anonymous, formal, impersonal. They might be focused on a specific task or interest, and often time-bound. Think about interactions at work or in large marketplaces, but people also form social circles based on shared interests, leisure activities.
Like meeting friends at a multiplex or park.
Exactly. And the economy is driven by markets, very much so. Organized around markets, financial systems. It's profit-driven, which can foster that sense of individualism we talked about.
Infrastructure is obviously a key feature.
Absolutely. Cities typically have advanced infrastructure, reliable utilities like gas, telephone, internet, complex road networks, airports, maybe metro rail systems, large shopping malls. City planning is a constant process of revision and upgrading.
And family structure, more nuclear families.
Yes, the nuclear family, parents and children, is much more common than the extended joint family. Individualism plays a role here. Family ties might be less binding, with more emphasis placed on the individual's goals and choices.
Are people in cities generally more aware of social issues, rights?
Often, yes. More class-conscious, perhaps more progressive on average. They're exposed to modern science, technology, different ideas. There's often greater awareness of rights and more participation in social or political movements.
And how is social order maintained? Less traditional authority.
Right. With the decreased influence of elders, religious leaders, or traditional community structures, cities rely more heavily on formal social controls, the education system, laws, police, courts to maintain order.
And that complex division of labor you mentioned earlier.
It's incredibly intricate. Think about medicine alone. You don't just have doctors. You have cardiologists, neurologists, pediatricians, radiologists, highly specialized and interdependent professions across all fields.
Okay, so cities are dynamic, diverse centers of opportunity, but they also face massive problems, don't they? Especially with rapid growth.
Huge problems. The rapid growth in urban population, both from natural increase and migration from rural areas, puts an enormous strain on public utilities and infrastructure. Even though India isn't as urbanized as some countries, maybe around 31% in 2011, the scale of the urban population means it faces a serious crisis.
And it's growing fast.
Projections suggest over half the population could be urban by 2030. This concentration fuels issues like poverty, unemployment, crime, beggary. Social evils tend to concentrate in cities too.
Let's talk about urban sprawl.
That's the physical expansion of the city, often outwards, eating into surrounding agricultural land or forests. The city grows geographically, but sometimes its economic base or infrastructure doesn't keep pace.
Leading directly to overcrowding.
Yes, it's a direct consequence. Too many people crammed into limited space. You feel it in housing, on transport, everywhere in most large Indian cities.
Housing is a massive issue, particularly slums.
Chronic shortage of affordable housing. This is especially true for migrants who come seeking work but can't afford decent shelter. Slums spring up. They have different names everywhere. Chopatpatis in Mumbai, Jogi Jomtis in Delhi, Busties in Kolkata, Cheras in Chennai.
It's shocking how prevalent they are.
In Mumbai, estimates suggest almost half the population lives in slums. Even planned cities like Chandigarh end up having slum areas. It's a reflection of deep inequality and lack of affordable options.
Unemployment is also high in cities.
Yes, often estimated between 15% and 25% of the urban workforce, and sometimes even higher among educated youth. The biggest cities often have the highest concentration of unemployment.
And beggary. It's quite visible in many cities.
It becomes a way of life for some urban poor, often due to lack of education or skills. Sometimes it's even organized, with gangs controlling territories. There are horrific stories of children being kidnapped or maimed for begging. It's actually criminalized in places like Mumbai.
Transport must be a nightmare.
Acute problems. Traffic congestion, bottlenecks are daily realities. As cities grow, the transport infrastructure struggles to cope. Commercial vehicles add another layer of complexity.
Water is another critical issue.
Major water shortages. Supply often falls far short of demand. Many cities just don't have enough water, especially in summer. Taps can run dry for days. Cities often have to pull water from distant rivers or lakes, sometimes impacting those areas too.
And dealing with waste. Sewerage.
Huge challenge. Sewerage systems are often insufficient or inefficient. No major Indian city is fully sewered. Lack of funds, unauthorized construction make it worse. A lot of untreated sewage ends up polluting rivers or the sea.
And just trash. Garbage disposal.
It's reaching alarming proportions. Huge quantities of garbage are generated daily. Landfills are overflowing, becoming breeding grounds for disease. They produce toxic leachate that can contaminate groundwater. This contributes to diseases like dysentery, malaria, typhoid, dengue.
A serious health hazard. And finally, urban crime.
Crime rates often increase with urbanization. Complex includes crimes by the poor out of desperation, but also white-collar crime, organized crime. Sometimes criminals even get political or bureaucratic protection. Violent crimes, abuse, rape, murder, kidnapping, cybercrime, economic offenses. It's a major concern for urban safety.
It sounds overwhelming, but cities are vital, right? They drive the economy. What efforts are being made for urban development despite these challenges?
They're absolutely vital. Backbone of economic expansion, engines of growth. They contribute maybe 60% of the national income. Per capita income is generally higher in cities, though obviously huge disparities exist within them.
Has there been a national strategy?
The National Commission on Urbanization back in 1988 laid out policy proposals. Things like managing the spatial pattern of development, trying to achieve a better population distribution between cities of different sizes, encouraging growth in smaller towns to act as countermagnets to the megacities, and improving service levels.
And specific programs followed.
Yes. Over the years, there have been programs like Urban Basic Services for the Poor, UBSP, Environmental Improvement of Urban Slums, EIUS, Integrated Development of Small and Medium Towns, IDSMT. Agencies like HUD-DCO provide housing finance. There was a Megacities project, poverty eradication programs.
What about the big recent initiatives?
We hear a lot about the Smart Cities mission, aiming to use technology to improve urban living. There's Amirit, the ATAL mission for rejuvenation and urban transformation, focusing on basic infrastructure like water supply and sewerage. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, urban for affordable housing. HRIDE for heritage city development.
And Swachh Bharat.
Swachh Bharat mission, Clean India mission, has a major urban component focusing on sanitation and waste management. So there's definitely a focus, a lot of schemes.
But what's the main challenge in implementing these?
A chronic shortage of resources has historically been a major hurdle. The urban sector has often received a relatively small share, maybe only 3–4%, of the total national plan funding since planning began. So funding these ambitious projects adequately remains a key challenge.
Wow. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. We've journeyed through this really intricate mosaic of Indian society, from the very distinct lives in tribal communities through the vast rural heartland and into these dynamic, complex urban centers.
Yeah.
It's so clear that while each segment has its unique character, they're all just profoundly linked, constantly influencing each other.
That really is the core takeaway, isn't it? You see those traditional features maybe more strongly in tribal and rural areas, but that continuous interaction, people moving, ideas spreading, economies linking, shapes everything. It drives development, creates social change across the board. Yeah. And as we saw, especially with the cities, this interaction also creates brand new challenges, huge pressures.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for you listening to this deep dive. As you think about all this, consider how this ongoing change, which happens at different speeds in different segments, might keep reshaping India's identity in the years ahead.
And perhaps, what lessons can we draw from India's experience? Managing this incredible diversity, this rapid growth across such different communities, could it offer insights for other parts of the world facing similar transformations? Something to definitely mull over.